Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another interview on the JayBee Milly channel. I am JayBee and joining me of course is Milly.
Hi.
We have Kaila.
Hello.
And the special guest who will be interviewing today is Mr. Stephen Miller. Thank you so much for joining.
Glad to be here. Yeah.
So it's an absolute pleasure to have you here and speak about your career and everything. And so I want to take it back to the beginning. So according to IMDb, of course, I don't know if that's going to be terribly accurate, but we'll find out in a moment, is that your career began in about 1971. But before this, what was your journey like to become an actor?
You know, it was really, I don't want to bore people, but I'm originally from North Carolina in the southern states. And I had the situation for me was I was not a particularly good student. I was only interested in sort of English and history, and I was no good at math and sciences and things like that. And in those years, I'm a boomer. I'm 76 now, and everybody, it was just the assumed thing that you would go to university, right? You would that was your course in life. It was sort of like, you get married, you get pregnant, and then you have a kid. It's that bam, 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 and so I didn't really care. I didn't want to do that. But my mother was from the mountain area in Virginia, and she was very much, as a young girl, smitten with the cadets at Virginia Military Institute, which is one of the two or three military schools in the United States that aren't official academies. And so I went there to university. It was very difficult, very hard. And that just coincided with the Vietnam War. And so while I was there, I kind of became against the war, but there wasn't anything I could do about it. After 2 years, you're actually technically in the Army, and there wasn't any way out. In those days, if you dropped out of university, if you were in university, you got deferred from the draft. If you dropped out, then you suddenly became draftable again. And if you got drafted, you had to do 5 years of active duty. And I really didn't want to do that. So the name of the game when you were a student was to stay in university if you could at all costs. So I stayed there and graduated in 1968. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I was an artillery officer. I didn't want to kill anybody. And right at the end of my last year of university, I found out that we could go to graduate school, that the Army would allow you to go to graduate school if you got accepted, and that would delay your going into active duty. And I owed them 2 years of active duty. So I said yes, and I got into graduate school, but the only thing I could do was creative writing. And at the time, there were only 3 universities in the US or in North America, that gave a master's degree in creative writing. There was Stanford, which was way too expensive. There was Iowa, which is the Iowa Writers Colony. It's very, very prestigious, and there was no way I was going to get in there. And then there was University of British Columbia. And I got in there. There were only 9 students, and I came up to Vancouver, and one of my courses was playwriting, and I didn't know anything at all about playwriting. I'd only seen plays in high school and stuff like that. And so I thought, oh, well, I've got to take this course in playwriting. And part of that involved going over to the theater at the University of British Columbia and seeing the plays that the theater department students were putting on. And I went over to watch that, and I've told people many times, it was just like somebody just clicked a switch in my head. It was astounding. I just fell in love with it right away. And all the people over there were so much. Everybody was so alive. Everybody was creative and enthusiastic and happy. And I wasn't a student there. I couldn't take any of the theater courses, but they always needed people to volunteer. And so I built sets and I did all kinds of technical work. I was pretty good at that kind of hands-on stuff. And I eventually got hired there while I was still a student to be on the technical staff. And it was a union job. It was amazing. I was getting way more money. I paid for everything in that year, you know, and I had a wonderful time, and I started acting. That's when I started acting. And the reason I started acting was because I was from the South and I had this Southern accent, and Vietnam was happening. And so plays were being rejigged to make Americans the bad guys. And I was this young, thuggish, you know, hick, you know, so they plugged me in to do little one-line spear carrying bad guy parts. So that's sort of how I got my acting start, and I really enjoyed that, and I tried to do a good job. And then I got my master's degree in 1970, and sort of after that, and a group of us graduated from there all at the same time, and we started a theater company called Tamanous Theater, which was a collective theater company that went on for like 25 years. It was a really successful theater company here. And so I did that, and there were no movies or TV in Vancouver at the time. And then the movies and TV started in about 1978, 79, when they had a tax shelter formula here, sort of like they did in Australia at the same time, when they were doing all these Australian movies like Picnic at Hanging Rock and Breaker Morant, and it was a big revival of the Australian industry, in the same way here. And I got a lot of those, mainly because I still sounded like an American, and they were always trying to masquerade Canadian locations as U.S. locations. So if you could pass as an American, you'd get hired, particularly if you had any experience. And I really liked the filming. I really enjoyed it. I liked the idea that it would be around after you were gone. I liked the idea of being able to do it again and again and get it right. And I liked all the razzmatazz with it. I liked the stunts, and I liked the idea that, you know, you could drive cars and, you know, all that stuff. It was really great, very attractive to me. And so that's basically how I got in the business. And I've been I've basically been in theater or movies or radio or whatever for my whole adult life. So, hey.
I mean, it's an amazing story to hear, because I think so many people reach that stage, like you say, where they get to college and they worry because they don't have everything sorted in their heads. I think it's a perception that so many people have, and just to hear the success that can still come to you without, you know, going into it knowing exactly what you want to do, it's always just so reassuring, I think, for so many people to hear. And it's just great to hear how, you know, you did get into the industry. I know you said theatre played a really big part for you. So do you remember if there was a certain play that you saw that really inspired you to, you know, really start moving forwards with things, or, you know, a little bit later on when you made that transition into movies, if there was a certain movie or actor that kind of sparked that transition?
Well, I had always liked movies, and in that time, and I had to take a film appreciation course, and the awful thing about this course was, and don't ever do this, if you ever get into academia and you have to do this, just don't do this. They scheduled this film appreciation course right after lunch. And everybody would go into the theater and they'd bring the lights down, and we'd watch something like Bergman, you know, and you know, you just drop off, right? Yeah. But I saw all kinds of stuff there that I would have never seen. I saw Ugetsu Monogatari. I saw all kinds of Bergman. I saw Buñuel. Godard, Truffaut, all the sort of European essentials. There were Billy Liar, all kinds of stuff like that. This Sporting Life, everything. And so that was, there was a lot of information coming in those years. And then also there was this big revival. This might seem normal to you guys, I don't know, but at the time, the whole idea of film noir, I had seen a fair amount of this stuff because when I was a little kid, like 11 and 12, that's when they started doing the midnight movie on TV, right? And what had happened was this guy, I believe his name was Ziff, who was a big millionaire guy, bought up an entire library, bought up all these libraries from, Republic and MGM, and he bought these things up to air in this late night hour, which was normally just a desert. And so they had all the monster movies, Frankenstein and stuff on the weekends. They would have those on the weekends, and my mother would let me just stay up and watch that with my little brother. And so I saw a lot of classic stuff when I was a kid, and then I saw a lot more of it when I was in university. So I had a pretty good film vocabulary by the time I was, out of grad school. And there was in those years, there was a big thing, the film noir revival. There was Bogart was everywhere. There was a huge amount of Bogart and George Raft and all these sort of noir guys, being shown. And that was really great. And so I can't put it down to just one movie. It was just a slew of appreciation of people's work, So that's I took my inspiration from a lot of people.
Yeah, that's an incredible way to put it. How you had so much to look up to, when you were getting into the industry, and a lot of the viewers watching are aspiring actors as well. What would your advice be to people watching who are looking to get into acting about how to prepare for an audition?
When I started, I was in a theater company that we had put together ourselves. So I didn't really have to audition for anything. And then when the movies came along and I had to audition, I hated it. I just couldn't stand it because, the audition is a completely different animal than doing the job. It really doesn't have anything to do much with doing the job. But I had a friend, an actor whose name is Ty Haller. And Ty is a little bit older than me, and he was one of the last contract actors at MGM. And in those days, when you went to do an audition at MGM, you brought a friend with you to read. They would be the reader. And what you didn't want to do was go in there with your friend and have your friend do a better job than you did and your friend get the job. So Ty was already a contract actor, so he was safe. So he got to go in with a whole lot of people and be the reader because everybody knew he couldn't get hired and it'd be better for them. And he told me, if you can ever get the chance to be the reader or to be on the other side of the table, do, because you see every variety of anxiety. When the actors come in to do their auditions, you see every variety of fear or people trying to ingratiate themselves with the producer and director, and you just see all those natural tactics that people come up because they're desperate to get a job. And you sort of learn that none of that stuff really works and is actually damaging. And that really what you should do is just come in and be a nice person and get on with it and do the best job you can with the scene or scenes that you have to do. And I learned that I really had to get good at auditions. And I talked to a lot of other actors about it. Sometimes, actors don't talk with each other about these things that they're just a little bit nervous about. And I said, what do you do? And people gave me tips and tricks about how to do it. And one thing that I went in was I always knew I knew all the lines. I never had to read anything. I never had to look down and read from the script. But I always kept the script in my hand because I was sending this subtle signal that this performance is not finished yet. It can be better. You know, I'm just, it's a work in progress. And I always tried to give the people the feeling that I was going to be somebody that would be good to work with. I had seen young actors, particularly young men, go into the audition with a kind of a macho attitude, like, I'm here, you know, you're not going to push me around. And being in a movie is like being in a submarine. You're really close with a lot of people, and sometimes for a long period of time, and often in excruciating circumstances. And the last thing that anybody needs is somebody to be a jerk. You know, it really is good if you can help people out, be reliable, be on time, be a grown up, not let your personal BS get in the way. And people respect that. And after you've done that a little while, you get a reputation for being somebody that can help, you know, in any kind of circumstances. And I was always a character actor, supporting actor, and sometimes I'd be working with people, you know, more famous actors and stuff who were considered difficult, and they had emotional baggage, and you just sort of kind of had to, in a weird way, coach them through it, you know, like be there for them. You know, if they were having a tough time, you have to say, yeah, you know, we'll get through it, don't worry, you know. And that's the part that you have to play sometimes, as an enabler, you know. So that's it.
Well, that's amazing. I love that you mentioned that a good way for, you know, aspiring actors to really learn is to reach out to people within the acting industry, the acting business, and pick their brain with knowledge. And it's a great
Sure.
reason why we started this show. And indeed, it's also a great reason why I believe that the show that you shared with us, the Raconteur series, is such a valuable resource, both for aspiring actors and fans of film, TV, and theatre in general. So I wanted to ask, what was your inspiration behind creating that series?
I did a lot of writing. You know, I had this idea, and this was early on, back around 1980, 81, something like that. And I had this idea to do a little book because there were movies being made in Vancouver. I was going to audio tape all the people that work behind the scenes, not the movie stars really, but the grips and the camera people and the sound boom guy. And I was going to do what we're doing right now with them. I was going to get their experience down on tape, and then I was going to write a little chapter on each one, and it was going to be a book of what the people do who actually make the movies. It was called Foot Soldiers, because one of the things that you often hear in the movie business is, you know, a movie unit is like an army. You know, you move along, you know, nothing stops you. You move from place to place, and you're fed and you're transported, and you just come in and you do your job, and things blow up, and then you go somewhere else. And a lot of people didn't know what a best boy was. A lot of people didn't know what a gaffer was. They didn't know what the second AD was. And I thought, well, I'll make this little book and I had sort of a deal with a local press. And then something happened, and I can't remember what it was. I think I must have gotten a job. But I had about 20 hours of audio tape of different people in different work capacities. And then when the pandemic happened, everything kind of shut down up here. I'm sure it's the same for you guys. And my wife said that I needed a hobby because I was just sitting in front of the computer, you know, like a big lump of dough, you know, all day. And she said, you need a hobby. So I took a couple of photography courses. I had done photography before, but it had always been with film, and now it was digital. And so I had a lot to learn. And so I did that. And then I went out and I got a really good camera. And to justify the expense of the camera, I had to think of something to do with it, right? So I resurrected this idea, and I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll do these long interviews, that because those raconteur interviews are usually about 45 to an hour long, of people in the business, and get their life experience and how they got into the career. To do it, I think we're probably doing the same thing, you guys and me. And it was wonderful to do in the pandemic because we got to see people, and we got to like kind of hang out with them, and they would be in our bubble, and we would, it was what we did for our social activity. So that was how that started. And we're refining it and trying to make it better, because we were every day was just a learning curve with that series. So we're reshooting the very first one we did because the quality was so terrible. But it's getting better.
That's such an amazing story, because like you say, it really does mirror, like there's very much similarities between that story and our own story, because we
Yeah.
started this going into lockdown, and so it's such a good hobby to pick people's brains on their experiences. And so I guess from your point, maybe we're going to ask you some questions that you've asked, a lot of other people, and we hope that we can kind of almost reverse the tables a bit. And to that end,
Yeah.
one question that I really like that you often ask your guests, having watched those episodes, is to get their favorite memories from all the times and experience that they've collected. So are there any favorite memories from your career at any point that you can kind of share as being particularly memorable?
Well, I guess one of the best things that's happened is meeting people that I never thought I would meet. And some of those meetings have been long, taken a day or two or a week or whatever, and some of them have been very quick, but that's been a big part of it. And one of them, in terms of Scooby Doo, was meeting Peter Boyle, who I just sort of worshipped, and had mainly in The Friends of Eddie Coyle, which is a great movie. I don't know if you know it or not, but it's a lovely gangster movie starring Robert Mitchum, and Peter Boyle plays one of the bad guys in it, and he's so good. And he was such a nice guy, and I got to talk to him on set. So that's the sort of thing. And I met Betty Davis was on a movie that I did, and she was in her 80s, and I had this very scary job. The idea, I was a emergency medical technician, like the guy that comes out of the ambulance, and I had to pick her up and take her down a flight of concrete stairs. And I thought, oh God, if I drop Betty Davis, they'll just shoot me, but we made it, and she was really sweet. And just that sort of thing. And then I did my wife, Susie Payne, who co-produces the Raconteur series with me, and our son, Spencer, who does music for it. We all, when my son was about 7 or 8, got hired to be in a movie directed by Konstantin Kostagavras, who did Zed. And that was a big movie. We were on it for 6 weeks or something, and it was shot in Alberta. And we went back and forth to do this movie. And Deborah Winger was the star, and Tom Berenger. And that was a real good experience. It was a nice, long experience. It wasn't easy. It was done we had some really horrible nighttime shoots in the rain that were just hard to get through. And our little boy was sleeping in the trailer, with the AD taking care of him and stuff. And but it was a big, long job. And so I've had a lot of things like that. But really, the nicest thing is meeting people. Deborah Winger was great, so.
Well, a movie that I saw from IMDb that instantly stood out to me through nostalgia and enjoyment was the Agent Cody Banks movie. Do you know
Oh
do you remember
yeah,
how that
yeah,
came about? Because that was such
yeah.
like a massive one at the time.
The cool thing about that was we were encouraged to improvise, and there was I'm sorry, I just can't remember the name, but there were a couple of people who were stand-up comics, who had a lot of experience in that sort of world. And we were encouraged to improvise. And so I improvised a lot in that. That was really, really lots of fun. And everybody was good in that. That was one of those movies where everybody had fun. There was no tension really in that film. Everybody was very professional, and the conditions were, it wasn't snowing or raining or anything like that. It was a really fun project to be on. And I just got hired. I got hired, I think, mainly because of the military thing. I played a general, I think, in that, and I can do that sort of thing in my sleep. So
That does sound amazing. And like you said, I think quite honestly, the best part of a lot of things is about just the people that you meet along the way. I think it's fair to say that we'd say the same for the channel. And I think, like you said, from working on the project, I'm sure that, like you said, you met some really interesting people, and that was kind of a big part of Cody Banks as well. So is there, like you said, that, meeting with them was certainly, one of the most memorable parts of Cody Banks. Is there anything else about the project that stands out to you in particular, from kind of how you came to work on it, or the kind of anything else?
Strange things stick in your mind. And one of the strange things on Cody Banks was it was supposed to be very futuristic kind of the place we were. And they had these segways, these little two-wheel things that you get onto. And those were kind of new at the time. And I don't know if you've ever been on one, but once you learn how to do it, they're great. And so we all had to learn how to do that, because they didn't know whether they were going to have us like wheel up and stop and, come into the scene on the Segway or not. So everybody had to sort of learn how to do the Segway. And they're really great once they get going. Getting off of them is where it gets hard, because when you step off of it, the Segway thinks, oh, you're trying, it tends to roll forward. But so I know this sounds completely off the subject, but we spent a lot of time fooling around on the Segway, which was really great.
Oh no, that does sound amazing. I know, JayBee, your little brother had one, didn't he? That it was always just in the corner of the room. He could never try and work out how to use it, and we've never tried either. I think I don't have the balance for it. The entire concept scares me.
They were a lot of fun. And once you learn, you've got it. It's like riding a bicycle. You just have to do it. Be brave.
No, it does certainly sound fun, and it is something that we really should have tried when there was one at with your brother. So but another topic that we are really excited to come on to is Monsters Unleashed, where you played CL Magnus. So prior to being cast in the movie, I guess, would you like to ask, how familiar were you with the Scooby Doo franchise? Is it something you watched?
I had remembered the cartoon show from I can't remember the year it happened. I was a little bit older than the cartoon was, so I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. What happened for me was I had started dancing, which was something that was completely out of my wheelhouse. And I had done a play. I had done Guys and Dolls, and I really wanted to do it. And I had done it here in Vancouver, and that had led to me taking a whole lot of dancing classes. And the result of that was the casting director knew that I was dancing and I could move, and so when the Scooby Doo auditions came up, they said, "Oh well, you'd be, they'd like to see you," and so I went in and we had, how many was it? It was maybe 2 weeks of rehearsal for the dance, and some really good dancers, some people who are like actual dancers, not pretend dancers like me, and that was a lot of fun, and it was really interesting to watch the way they did Scooby Doo, because it was one of the earlier digital movies, and they were very conscious of. They had a big chrome ball that they would walk through. We would do Scooby Doo, and we would pretend to see Scooby Doo for our eye line, and then they would do that again with this chrome ball, and they would do that for Scooby Doo's angle, so that they could see where the reflections were, and how the light hit Scooby Doo, and then they had a sort of a puppet head, Scooby Doo head, that they would walk through the same route. So sort of everything we did, we had to do like 3 times. We had to do our side of it until we got it right, and then we had to do Scooby Doo's side of it in multiple ways to make sure that the digital people could composite the Scooby Doo effect, into the movie correctly. So that was really fascinating to watch that, and it took a lot of time, and it was one of those things where you, in an odd way, you have to act, but you're really acting kind of for a technical reason, not for necessarily a dramatic reason. So in a funny way, the pressure is off a little bit. So, and you can pay attention to this, the technical aspects of this thing that's going on around you. It was pretty neat. I liked it a lot, and yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing experience to be able to audition in I guess it was a different kind of setting, right, compared to other projects or auditions you have.
Yeah, I don't think that there were very many lines. I think it was basically, can you look like Red Rackham, and can you do the line dance, and can you say what you have to say, and be kind of over the top, goof, and I can do all that.
Were you always auditioning for CL Magnus, or were there other roles that you were interested in at the time?
Was it, well, no, which one? What? I'm sorry, I said Red Rackham. Oh, I'm trying to remember what part I played. But no, I don't think I don't recall. I think I was just brought in, and I may have been brought in to read a different part. Sometimes they don't have enough text, and they'll bring you in to read a different part, and then you'll get cast for something different just because of the way you look, or the different who you're going to be up against. That's part of that whole thing about being on the other side of the table. You have to realize sometimes that they bring you in and you think, oh God, they're bringing me in for that. I'm totally wrong for that. They're making me read two pages of stuff, and and really they're just trying to get a really good look at you, and they can imagine what you can do a lot of times. So
yeah, I mean, you definitely did make the role your own, fitting into that whole vibe of the Faux Ghost, just such an iconic scene. It's definitely one that I kind of go back to, especially with the musical number, as you were
Yeah.
saying. And so for all, it was very much, your performance, your character. Given that, CL Magnus originally originated from that original 1969 show, at any point did any of the crew of the movie or even yourself refer back to the animated version, or did you kind of just make it an original character?
No, it was not. There was not a lot. There may have been for the writers, and they may have been for the production design and all that kind of stuff. But for us, no. There may have been some drawings in the wardrobe when we got dressed, but not in terms of being on set. There wasn't really time to do something like that. That they for all those multiple things I was talking about the chrome ball and the puppet and everything, it moved along pretty quickly, which was amazing, actually. It was a big technical job, and they did keep it going. So
I think about that Faux Ghost scene quite a bit because it's almost one scene in two parts. So there's the scene, before the mystery is wrapped up, and then there's kind of massive party scene at the end as well. And so for that, there's like the whole entire cast is pretty much there with, of course,
yeah.
Ruben having a cameo as like the DJ. So huge sequence. And you've mentioned Peter Boyle, but was there anyone that was in like working on that sequence, either behind the camera or in front of the camera, that you were also really looking forward to speaking to, or that
It was
you got along
also
with?
Matthew Lillard was who was somebody who I'd seen before, and he was a nice guy. He was good to work with, and also I think pretty much in charge of who he was supposed to be. Sometimes an actor has to be you have to guard your part. You have to sort of, in a funny way, have a little protective wall up around your part sometimes when you're a leading actor in a big movie like that, because things are going so fast, and it's lunchtime, and all kinds of stuff is going on that don't have anything to do with what you're trying to do. And he was pretty professional about all that. I was on a TV series a long time ago called Stingray with Nick Mancuso was the leading actor in that. And the way that series was set up, there were no other regular actors but Nick. He was the only person that was there from episode to episode to episode. And the directors were different all the time, right? So there was nobody to keep continuity. He had to do everything like that, and it was I watched him, wrestle with that. I think that series went on for a couple of years, and he just had to be everything. He had to be the star. He had to be in a way, he had to be the producer, because he was keeping it all together. He had to, in a way, he had to be the director, because he had to not allow himself to just be swayed. Somebody would say, well, be funny here. And it was like, no, I have to be who I'm supposed to be. And that kind of happens more frequently than people are aware of.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's quite interesting that you mentioned Matthew Lillard there as a standout, because to this day he is the voice of Shaggy. So, for him kind of knowing that role so well back then, to then go on and be, the animated voice of Shaggy for so many years as well, he just knows the role inside and out and is absolutely, brilliant at it. So, just such certainty there for him about what the role was. And I guess something there was a little bit of uncertainty around with this movie that was all the kind of villains and things like that, because we've seen some footage that it was very much kind of up in the air which villains they wanted to recreate and that they wanted to bring in. And I think there was some speculation of bringing CL Magnus in as in his traditional Redbeard outfit at some stage. Is that something that you ever remember kind of been part of or anything like that?
No, I'm not. I just showed up and did what they told me to do. And they don't consult with you, like maybe if I was, Matthew or somebody, they would ask me what I thought, but no. I just that they said, "What do you think of this t-shirt?" And I said, "Oh, it's nice." That's about it.
Oh, that's great. And to be honest, like those live action movies are known so well as well for kind of the sets, and as I was saying, the Faux Ghost just stands out so well as one of the best sets we've seen on a Scooby movie. And I guess they've been really quite renowned as well for kind of building up the full scenes instead of trying to add bits in and things like that afterwards. So what was it like being on set in that Faux Ghost environment?
Well, first off, it was all done in that one kind of what would you call it? I mean, it was like a big stage set. It was about the size of I guess it's almost the size of a gymnasium, or a basketball court, or a tennis court, about that size, maybe a little smaller, and with a lot of overhead space, and I think it had mostly been, I'm trying to remember if it had been adapted from another building or purposely built. I think it had been adapted from another building. We were right down on the river in Vancouver, and there was a lot of piers and stuff. You had to sort of walk around through, the waterfront to get into the set. That it was everything was there that you needed. I mean, it was very well thought out, however they constructed that space. It had all the good angles to shoot from. It had places for you to go sit down where you didn't have to be off the set. You could sit down over here and watch what was going on, which I think is really wonderful. That's something that I really recommend to other actors. If you get on a movie or a TV show and you have the chance to just kind of sit over out of the way, not get in anybody's way, it's really good to watch and watch what everybody has to do, because it helps. The more you know about the technical aspects of it, and the more you know about the different jobs that people are having to do, it really does improve your work too, because then you really understand how you fit in to the puzzle. And so you could do that. You could go over and sit and talk to Peter Boyle, who was, once you went over and introduced yourself and told him that you were the world's greatest fan of Eddie Coyle and Young Frankenstein, and then he'd talk to you, and you could chat with him, and that was really good to just be able to hang out. And everybody was pretty democratic. Sarah Michelle, sorry,
Sarah
I'm a
Michelle
senior.
Gellar, yeah.
Yeah. She had a very heavy duty security presence. She had gotten threats from people, I think because of previous things. She was like Buffy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she had gotten a series of kind of spooky threats and stuff in the years previous to doing the show, and so she had a big security kind of presence. So she was kind of by herself a lot of the time. Like, we would finish a scene and she would just go to the trailer surrounded by bodyguards, and everybody else would pretty much just hang out. And that was a little odd to have that happening right beside you, because other than that, everything was very casual there. It was not like there were not a lot of martinets, people screaming, telling you to get off the set, get out of here, and go to the trailer, blah. You know, it was a very social scene. I think the dancers had a lot to do with that. The dancers were around a fair amount because they needed people, you know, and so they used the dancers for that a lot of times, and um, so it was convivial. So that's my experience of that whole thing. It's a good time.
Yeah, that set sounds like an amazing place to work as an actor. Were you able to keep anything from the set of that movie?
Did I keep anything? I think I got to keep the T-shirt, but I don't have it now. I don't know, I don't know where it went. No, I didn't have any keepsakes.
And on the bonus features of the DVD, they released a mini documentary episode featuring some of the characters, such as yours. Do you remember at what point that was being filmed?
They had a EPK digital publicity, you know, kit people there. I think it was maybe sometime they were grabbing people as they came off, you know, for 2 or 3 days, and just ask us what we felt, what we thought, and all that. And that's pretty standard. That happens a lot. And in fact, it's really nice to be included. Sometimes they don't include people like me. They, you know, they want to get the stars for sure, but you know, they don't pay as much attention to the supporting cast. But it's really good to be in something like that. It's great.
That's amazing, and it did definitely add a lot of like backstory to those characters, because I almost wish that we could have got like I mean, nowadays maybe this would have been more possible, but like a spin-off Netflix series focusing on all of the people that were in the Faux Ghost at the time, to get a canonical backstory about all of them, because it's just so amazing. And
maybe they will. Maybe I'll have to dress up, you know.
or maybe like an animated version. That'd be pretty cool as well. But is there like one defining memory, be it, you know, something to do with Peter Boyle, or perhaps even the reception to the movie afterwards, that kind of sticks out to you with that experience?
I think the defining memory for me really was the dancing. You know, and the rehearsal for the dance. I don't know if any of you guys have ever done that. You know, I had never been a dancer. I'd never really thought about it, you know. And then once I started that, I realized how it's a completely different part of your mind that you have to harness to be a dancer. You basically are learning something not in your head, but in your body. And it's a big adjustment, and I think I think it's probably more common that women go into dance than men, and I certainly had no exposure to dance when I was a kid, not in North Carolina, and it's grueling. It's really hard. I was in the Army, and I was in shape when I was a young man, and dancing is by far the hardest workout I've ever had. And I did modern, and I did jazz, and I did tap, and you know, jazz was just the jazz classes I did, and I did the very like you know, I don't know if they have anything lower than baby jazz, but you know, I was like embryo jazz, you know, and I was just bagged after those classes, and so I recommend that to people because first off, it's just an amazing workout, and then secondly, you do learn in a whole different way, and you're presenting yourself constantly as a dancer. You're never not being that character that the dance is expressing. You're always acting as a dancer, and it was just a wonderful new thing for me. I loved it. I was 50. You know, I was like, oh my God, you know. like, ooh, places hurt. I didn't even know I had that, you know. So yeah, that's what I really remember from it. That's what I had fun doing the movie, you know, met people. Um, it was not uh, a stressful movie to be on, but the thing that was new and the thing that was so much fun and the thing I think that maybe changed me a little bit was the dancing. And I know it's not particularly great dancing, right? You know, from my point of view, but we still had to do it all. I had to
Yeah,
learn it and all
no,
that.
we've interviewed a couple of choreographers that go into so much detail that even if there's a dance sequence for, you know, a gag scene or a joking scene, like it all, you know, comes together in this immaculate performance. And I know that the choreographer of Monsters Unleashed then went on to, I believe, direct the Hocus Pocus sequel and stuff like that, which arguably the best sequence in that movie is the massive dance scene. So it's kind of interesting how that goes full circle.
I forget her name, but she was great.
I did too. I'm gonna have to like
Yeah,
research it and flash it up because I feel bad for
yeah. She
forgetting, but
she was
yeah.
fantastic. Fantastic choreographer. Yeah.
Definitely a very fun scene, especially how everyone's all coordinated as well. I can't even imagine the timing that must have gone into that.
Well, all the dancers were fine. They just boom. You know, they just it's like they're like robots, you know, but you know, I'm out there going 5, 6, 7, 8, what? You know.
And so when the movie did eventually come out, did you manage to attend the premiere or did you see the movie at all?
I don't think I got to the premiere. I think there might I can't remember. I'm sorry, I can't remember. There probably was a cast and crew screening here in Vancouver. But it's just lost. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Don't worry. I mean, honestly, this movie, like, you know, it's now celebrating its 19th anniversary. So many years on and things have progressed so much, but it's still such a much loved movie by so many people. And, you know, perhaps I think part of that is just because it's so fun. Like we we're saying, the Faux Ghost scenes. And clearly, you know, that's very kind of reminiscent really of the fun that everybody was having on the set and the energy there as well. I think that's part of the reason that the movie came out so well.
Yeah.
So what does it feel like to have worked on a movie that, you know, still nearly 20 years later, it's still so well loved, so well watched?
Well, it's really nice. The thing that I love acting, I love theater. And another thing to tell actors, young actors, is if you can do theater, that's where you really learn how to act. You really should do as much theater as you can, and you should work at it, and you should try to be the best stage actor that you can be, because you can, if you're a good theater actor, you can become a good film and TV actor, but it doesn't work the other way. You have to know what you're doing, and the way you learn what you're doing is by being a theater actor. And so when but the thing that was always so frustrating to me about theater was, you know, you do it and then it would be over and it would nobody could ever see it again. And I've always been I had a history degree, and I like the idea of having things kind of permanent, you know. And I'm a bit of an archivist, you know, kind of like you guys. And I like the idea of being able to retrieve things from the past. And so to have something that was done, you know, 20 years ago or even longer, kind of come back and be appreciated is really, really lovely. And I've had that happen a couple of times. There are a few things I've been in that people have wanted to know about, and it just feels good. It feels like you're validated. You know, you get that feeling of, oh well, you know, it wasn't just to make money. You know, somebody actually gives a damn. You know.
They certainly do. And I think like it's a timeless movie as well. So like you said, something that comes back 20 years later, it's not, you know, specific to a certain generation or something like that. You know, it's something that you know, a 7-year-old that's just discovered Scooby Doo for the first time can put on, love, and, you know, it becomes one of their favorite movies as well. So it certainly is something that I think, you know, another 20 years down the line, people are still going to love just as much. And I'll admit that does kind of reach almost the end of the questions that we had for you today, but do you have any upcoming projects that you can share with us at all?
We're doing the Raconteur series. We're going to probably do another season or complete another season. There's another couple of things that we're sort of juggling, Susie and I, film things up here. But I'm not auditioning or acting anymore, and I'm not writing anymore. I wrote like 5 novels, and I stopped that when everything sort of stopped when the pandemic happened, and I just shifted over into essentially being a content creator, I guess is what people would call me now, and I really like that. I really like I've worked with people and for people for so long. And now the idea of being able to sort of, you know, do what I want to do and put it out there, and I'm on a pension now and everything, you know, and I'm retired essentially, so I don't really have to take every little tiny part that I get. There's a lot of Hallmark movies that are done here in Vancouver, and everybody is working on the Hallmark movies, which are all pretty much the same, and and I don't have to do that. So I don't mind. I don't hate it or anything like that. I'm not trying to put anybody down, but you know, it's nice to be in a way in control and free.
Your upcoming projects sound very exciting. Where can people keep up with your upcoming work?
Well, I guess Facebook. I'm on Facebook under my name, and Raconteur has a Facebook page, and we're on YouTube. We post everything on YouTube as Raconteur Artist Interviews. That's the name of the channel, and when we decide on what we're going to do, when we finally make up our minds, then we'll tell the world. But they're all going to be probably documentary things. There was, for instance, there's one thing I would like to do. I'm really trying to decide if I can do it. Is there's a baseball stadium here in Vancouver that's one of the most beautiful parks in the world. It's very small. It's only seats about 5,000 people, but they have the minor league team for the Toronto Blue Jays here. And I always wanted to do, I love the process. It's part of being a technical person. I wanted to do a game from the very start of the day, when the guys come in and do the grass, and the people that are going to cook the hot dogs bring in the ice for the drinks, and the people who do the tickets are just coming to work, and just follow it right through the whole thing and right through the whole game, and not pay attention to the game, but pay attention to all the ushers and the people who sell the beer and the people who have to sweep up when it's all over, and the guys who park the cars, and just the process of getting something that involving and that big in front of people. And that's something I want to do. And I think it'll take 3 cameras and probably 3 days, but I think we can do it. So we'll see.
That's
The
wonderful.
big thing is getting permission. Permission is the main
Mm.
thing. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Definitely a great way to not only show off the artistry of life as well, but also to focus in on those unsung heroes as well. So
Yes.
definitely,
Yes.
I think, you know, of course, if you get permission, fingers crossed that works out, then that we can see that quite soon. So
I hope
uh,
so.
thank you so much. And of course, as Millie was saying, you know, that does wrap up our interview questions for today. So just thank you so much for all the time you've given us. You've been very generous with it, and so we really do appreciate it.
Back at you. Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, thank you so much.
I wish you guys all the best.
You as well. Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
And
Okay.
for the purpose of the video, and we'll leave all of the links to the Raconteur series in the description
Cool.
down below. Again, to anyone that's looking into getting into the acting profession, anyone interested in that, please do go and check that out. I do highly recommend it. And of course,
Thank
as
you.
well, for Kaila, where can people find you on the internet?
I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Scooby in the Know.
Definitely recommend that as well. So thank you so much. Our link tree will be down there as well. And if you do want to see more episodes, then please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.